Ethiopian state medias are instigating Tigray genocide than Facebook. T-Tube. News Today, February 22, 20222. Headlines: T-Tube is the voice for the voiceless. Subscribe, follow and share. Facebook accused by survivors of letting activists incite ethnic massacres with hate and misinformation in Ethiopia. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism. While T-Tube argues, Ethiopian government medias have worrished on disseminating crimes and crime-instigating, criminal propaganda. Some of them are Fana TV, EBC, Walter TV, Oromia, Afar, South, and Amhara regional, state medias, and their partner ESAT TV. The world has to incriminate and make liable for these working on genocidal propagandas.
Hope, humanity's retreat from peace is shameful. He said, "We have witnessed the slaughter resulting from conflicts in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, and those in the Ethiopian region of the Tigray. The Oromo Liberation Front is sharing photos standing on the dead bodies of ENDF troops. ENDF has been doing the same thing in the last 15 months on the innocent civilians of the people of Tigray and Walega Oromo."
Abiy Ahmed Ali is disseminating as if Ethiopia starts electricity production at Blue Nile Mega Dam. T-Tube argues this is fake propaganda deliberately disseminated to get public support following the ambush of all ENDF troops and to change the conflict as external fight with the neighboring Egypt and Sudan. China hopes rise for Ethiopia after US pulls duty-free export deal over Tigray atrocities. We know China has been actively participating on Tigray genocide, now crying on the lose of its income from duty-free export items. China says Ethiopian items have been struck off list of African products allowed tariff-free entry to the US market. As the US withdraws, Chinese importers and investors can and will fill the gap, Observer says. Here is the full crier of China. Follow us for details. Ethiopians living abroad of the United States are donating more than 11.5 million birr worth of food aid to the war-torn Amhara and Afar regions. They are pretending to be fair and religious leaders, however they said nothing on the 15 months suffering people of Tigray. Facebook accused by survivors of letting activists incite ethnic massacres with hate and misinformation in Ethiopia. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism. While T-Tube argues, Ethiopian government medias have worrished on disseminating crimes and crime-instigating, criminal propaganda. Some of them are Fana TV, EBC, Walter TV, Oromia, Afar, South, and Amhara regional, state medias, and their partner ESAT TV. The world has to incriminate and make liable for these working on genocidal propagandas. On the afternoon of November 2 last year, Michael Taweld Medhan, a Tigrayan jeweler and father of 9, headed to work in Gondar, a city in the Amhara region of northern Ethiopia where he had lived for more than 3 decades. When Michael arrived in the city, he found a mob looting his nephew's workshop. Michael begged them to stop. Instead, they turned on him. One relative, who wished to remain anonymous for fear of reprisals, told the bureau, the looters took them, Michael along with another 10 or 11 people who worked in that area, by vehicle. We tried to follow them but we were not able to get their whereabouts. Then other people told us they were killed. They are buried in a mass grave. Michael was not political, his relative said. He was not educated, and did not engage with the hatred and misinformation that swamps Ethiopian social media. Yet his relative claimed online hate campaigns and calls for violence, particularly on Facebook, played a key role in not only his killing, but many others. The worst thing that contributed to their killing are the so-called activists who have been spreading hate on social media, he told the bureau. Some posts, he claims, would name individuals or even post photos helping create an atmosphere, inciting attacks, killings and displacements. Michael Taweld Medhan was targeted because he was Tigrayan. His relative said thousands have died and millions more have been displaced since fighting broke out between government forces and armed opposition groups from the country's Tigray region in November 2020. The government has also been fighting an armed group from the Oromia region, and the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said last November that the stability of Ethiopia and the wider region is at stake. On November 9, Mercy Ndegwa, Facebook's public policy director for East Africa, and Mark Smith, its global content management director, used a blog post to offer reassurances that Ethiopia has been one of our highest priorities, and that their company will remain in close communication with people on the ground. But the Bureau's investigation has uncovered a litany of failures. The company has known for years that it was helping to directly fuel the growing tensions in the country. Many of those fighting misinformation and hate on the ground, fact-checkers, journalists, civil society organizations and human rights activists, say Facebook's support is still far less than it could and should be. A senior member of Ethiopia's media accused Facebook of just standing by and watching this country fall apart. Others told the Bureau that they felt requests for assistance had been ignored and that meetings failed to materialize. These failures, they said, were helping to fuel a conflict that has already led to reports of ethnic cleansing and mass rape. Amnesty International has accused both sides in the conflict of carrying out atrocities against civilians. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism added, all the while posts inciting violence or making false claims designed to encourage hate between ethnic groups in Ethiopia have been allowed to circulate freely. The Bureau has identified and spoken with relatives of people allegedly killed in multiple different attacks but has not been able to cross-check specific details on the ground because of the ongoing violence. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism also added Facebook said it had worked for 2 years on a comprehensive strategy to keep people in Ethiopia safe on their platforms, including engaging with civil society groups, fact-checking organizations, and forming a special policy unit, while T-Tube argues Ethiopian government medias have worrised on disseminating crimes and crime instigating criminal propaganda. Some of them are Fana TV, EBC, Walter TV, Oromia, Afar, South, and Amhara are state medias, and their partner ESAT TV. The world has to incriminate and make liable for these working on genocidal propagandas. Abiy Ahmed's medias have been disseminating genocidal hate propagandas and racial abuses of the butcher Abiy himself. He insulted the people of Tigray as weeds, cancers, day hinds, steguraloe or newcomers, invaders, etc. All this was said by the Nobel Peace winner butcher Abiy Ahmed Ali.
The Oromo Liberation Front is sharing photos standing on the dead bodies of ENDF troops. ENDF has been doing the same thing in the last 15 months on the innocent civilians of the people of Tigray and Wolega Oromo. ENDF, supported by Eritrean man-eating troops, Somalia backward terrorist troops, China's drones, UAE drones bought from Trump administrating, Turkey's drones, Iranian drones, Russian and Ukrainian armaments and other invaders have been burning the dead bodies of the people of Tigray. While this was committed, the Amaras have been coordinating, participating, looting all the properties of the people of Tigray and its heritages. Even the religious institutions have been contributing huge amount of money for the invading troops. To list some, Abba Girma, who is alleged to be a magician, and Memhir Miritaba Safra are the public figures who were committed crimes against the monasteries of Tigray. They looted and sold ancient heritages of Tigray. Now they are teaching humanity. They are telling us the inhuman practices of Oromo Liberation Front. But T-Tube argues Oromo Liberation Front is doing what the Amhara taught it. The man-eating troops have been committing unimaginable crimes in Tigray and Wolega Oromo in the last 15 months. They massacred in masses, thrown the dead bodies into the river, burnt dead bodies, gang-raped women and children, cleaned more than 3 million of people from different regions in Tigray, and looted all they have had, including heritages from monasteries and churches. Now, they are crying on the photos displaying on Facebook when it is committed up on them. T-Tube argues, this is irrational. They don't have moral capacity to complain others when the inhuman events is being committed by them.
Abiy Ahmed Ali is disseminating as if Ethiopia starts electricity production at Blue Nile mega dam. T-Tube argues this is fake propaganda deliberately disseminated to get public support following the ambush of all ENDF troops and to change the conflict as external fight with the neighboring Egypt and Sudan. Ethiopia began producing electricity for the first time from its Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, a massive hydropower plant on the River Nile, but neighbors Sudan and Egypt say will cause severe water shortages downstream. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed officially inaugurated electricity production on Sunday from the mega dam, a milestone in the controversial multi-billion-dollar project. Abiy, accompanied by high-ranking officials, toured the power generation station and pressed a series of buttons on an electronic screen, a move officials said initiated production. The Prime Minister sought to assure neighboring nations his country did not wish to harm their interests. Ethiopia's main interest is to bring light to 60% of the population who is suffering in darkness, to save the labor of our mothers who are carrying wood on their backs in order to get energy, Abiy said. As you can see, this water will generate energy while flowing as it previously flowed to Sudan and Egypt, unlike the rumors that say the Ethiopian people and government are damming the water to starve Egypt and Sudan. Egypt's foreign ministry, however, accused Ethiopia of persisting in its violations of a preliminary deal signed between the three nations in 2015, prohibiting any of the parties from taking unilateral actions in the use of the river's water. The first violations of the initial agreement related to the filling of the dam, the ministry said in a statement on Sunday. There was no immediate comment from Sudan, no binding deal. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is set to be the largest hydroelectric scheme in Africa but has been at the center of a regional dispute ever since Ethiopia broke ground there in 2011. Ethiopia's downstream neighbors Egypt and Sudan view the dam as a threat because of their dependence on Nile waters, while Addis Ababa deems it essential for its electrification and development. The $4.2 billion project is ultimately expected to produce more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity, more than doubling Ethiopia's electricity output. State media reported the 145-meter (475-foot) high dam, which lies on Blue Nile River in the Benishangul Gumuz region of western Ethiopia, not far from the border with Sudan, had started generating 375 megawatts of electricity from one of its turbines on Sunday. Egypt, which depends on the Nile for about 97% of its irrigation and drinking water, sees the dam as an existential threat. Sudan hopes the project will regulate annual flooding but fears its own dams could be harmed without agreement on the GERD's operation. Both countries have been pushing Ethiopia for a binding deal over the filling and operation of the massive dam, but talks under the auspices of the African Union, have failed to reach a breakthrough. Undermine Ethiopia's sovereignty. William Davison, senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, said GERD is seen domestically as a symbol of Ethiopia resisting external pressure. The government has propagated the idea that foreign actors are trying to undermine Ethiopia's sovereignty, so I think this will be cast as showing they are still making progress despite a hostile environment, Davison said. Adesula Shaif of the Brookings Institution in Washington added GERD's commissioning was a rare positive development that can unite a deeply fractured country, after 15 months of brutal conflict with Tigrayan rebels. The newly generated electricity from the GERD could help revive an economy that has been devastated by the combined forces of a deadly war, rising fuel prices and the COVID-19 pandemic, he said. Ethiopia, the second most populous country on the continent, has the second biggest electricity deficit in Africa according to the World Bank, with about two-thirds of the population of about 110 million lacking a connection to the grid. The dam was initiated under former Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, the leader who ruled Ethiopia for more than 2 decades until his death in 2012. Civil servants contributed 1 month's salary towards the project in the year of its launch, and the government has since issued dam bonds targeting Ethiopians at home and abroad. Samuel Getachew, an independent journalist reporting from Addis Ababa, told Al Jazeera it is the biggest public project Ethiopians have participated in. This is seen as a welcome addition to what Ethiopians have aspired to be, a self-sufficient nation, he said. Lost so much. Officials on Sunday credited Abiy with reviving the dam after what they claim was mismanagement delayed its progress. Our country has lost so much because the dam was delayed, especially financially, project manager Kiefer Horo said in his remarks. The process of filling the GERD's vast reservoir began in 2020, with Ethiopia announcing in July of that year it had hit its target of 4.9 billion cubic meters. The reservoir's total capacity is 74 billion cubic meters, and the target for 2021 was to add 13.5 billion. Last July, Ethiopia said it had hit that target, meaning there was enough water to begin producing energy, although some experts cast doubt on the claims. It is known that Abiy Ahmed Ali violated and minimalized the production capacity of the dam. That is why Tube is arguing this is fake news, that Abiy Ahmed Ali made it to get extra soldiers from the population on the lies of external forces are going to invade Ethiopia. Abiy is the father of lies. China hopes rise for Ethiopia after US pulls duty-free export deal over Tigray atrocities. We know China has been actively participating on Tigray genocide, now crying on the loss of its income from duty-free export items. China says Ethiopian items have been struck off list of African products allowed tariff-free entry to the U.S. market. As the U.S. withdraws, Chinese importers and investors can and will fill the gap, Observer says. Sami Abdallah and his more than 100 employees and associates in Addis Ababa have had a terrible start to the year. Since January 1, they have not been able to export their apparel to the US, their biggest market for the past decade, because duty-free shipments from Ethiopia are no longer allowed. The last shipment we did was in December before the delisting, said Abdallah, owner of Addis Ababa-based home decor and fashion company, Sami Ethiopia. Ethiopian textiles and apparel had long enjoyed duty-free access to the American market under the African Growth and Opportunity Act of 2000, AGOA, which covered more than 6,500 products from eligible African nations. But on New Year's Eve, President Joe Biden's administration dropped Ethiopia from the lucrative trade deal, citing abuses and atrocities committed in its war-ravaged northern Tigray region. Tigray rebels claim dozens killed in drone strike on Ethiopia camp the 9th of January 2022 for Abdallah's 70 full-time and part-time workers, and 120 outsourced artisans supplying the production line. The news hit hard. The effect would be devastating for many Ethiopians, especially young female workers at factories that were exporting under AGOA, Abdallah said. Some factories have closed down and some are trying to figure out where and how to shift their production export market. Mesfin Tiganu, chairman of the American Ethiopia Public Affairs Committee (AEPAC) in Washington, said the end of AGOA would devastate lives that depended on the factories exporting to the U.S. Along with global diaspora leaders, I recently visited Ethiopia. I saw a country damaged by war, and livelihoods further threatened by the end of AGOA benefits, he said. But as the U.S. withdraws, China is moving in. Ethiopia was primed to rebuild and get back on track as a liberalizing, fast-growing economy, Tiganu said. To do this, the nation will need international partners. China is already heavily invested in and is set to increase its economic flows with Ethiopia. It will take time, along with others. Chinese importers and investors can and will fill the gap created by the AGOA delisting. However, Tiganu also noted the need for equilibrium. We do feel it's in America's interest to restore some balance to Chinese influence in the Horn of Africa, he said. For Abdallah at Sami Ethiopia, sustaining the business and avoiding job losses depend on diversifying into other markets as quickly as possible. We produce mid to high-end products which might allow us to cut margins to get the business going until the market stabilizes, he said. China had been considered many times in the past but the connection had not been made yet, Abdallah said. We sell in Japan, Australia, France, Italy, South Africa, and Kenya. The US was our main destination, so it will take time and cost a lot to shift to new areas. According to US data, Ethiopia exported about $237 million of tax-free goods under AGOA in 2020, most of it clothing and textiles. Total imports from Ethiopia hit $601.8 million last year, mostly coffee, and woven and knit apparel, up nearly 15% from $524 million in 2020. Will the G7's infrastructure plan undo the Belt and Road in Africa? The 18th of July 2021.
Although Ethiopia is a small apparel and footwear source compared to China, Vietnam or Turkey, brands such as Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein that rely on Ethiopia could be affected, since COVID-19 had already disrupted supply chains. Ethiopia supplies to fashion retailers or companies such as Walmart, The Children's Place, PVH Corp., Victoria's Secret and dozens of others, creating thousands of jobs back home. Other global brands that source apparel from Ethiopia include British multinational retailer M&S and Swedish fast fashion giant H&M. But this rising star in the Horn of Africa started losing its shine as a trade destination as the Tigray civil war worsened, with thousands killed and millions displaced in fighting since November 2020. What is behind the fighting in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region? American clothing company PVH Corp., owner of brands such as Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, Warner's, Olga and True & Company, blamed the war in announcing the closure of its Ethiopian factory in November. Next came the New Year's Day U.S. sanctions suspending AGOA. China sees U.S. sanctions as interference in the internal affairs of Ethiopia. In December, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi stopped over in Addis Ababa on his way back from the FOCAC Forum on China-Africa Cooperation meetings in Senegal. Meeting top Ethiopian ministers, Wang promised Beijing would support its longtime ally and stick to its principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations. China opposes UN probe of Tigray abuse, calls it interference. China does not meddle in the internal affairs of Ethiopia, and disagrees with the practice of some external forces to pressure Ethiopia for the political purposes, Wang said. China is a big investor in Ethiopia and channeled $13.7 billion United States dollars in loans to it between 2000 and 2019. It also funded and built the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, Ethiopia's first electrified line, while Chinese companies have invested in industrial parks, especially in the light manufacturing sector. Delivering the keynote speech for the November 29-30 meetings of the FOCAC, seen as China's response to AGOA, Chinese President Xi Jinping promised open, green lanes for agricultural products and more zero-tariff treatment in a bid to reach $300 billion United States dollars in total African imports in the next 3 years. Ethiopia's renowned coffee, its number one export, has also been affected by the loss of AGOA, as the US was among its top markets. But the Chinese market is warming to the beverage. In January, Ethiopian ambassador Teshome Toga and Chinese live streaming star Austin Lee Jiaki, also known as the Lipstick King, helped sell over 11,000 bags of Ethiopian coffee in 1 second. Ethiopia's coffee ceremony is a core cultural custom. Photo, Daniel Allen. Ethiopia's coffee ceremony is a core cultural custom. Photo, Daniel Allen. Hannah Ryder, chief executive of Beijing-based consultancy Development Reimagined, said losing AGOA benefits was not the only challenge for companies in Ethiopia. They were already being battered by COVID-19 disruptions and the Tigray situation. They are now looking both to the internal African market or to the Chinese market for opportunities, Ryder said. No doubt this will make Chinese and African companies that do utilize AGOA ensure they have diversified their markets so that they are not just dependent on the US. Professor Anne Fitzgerald, director of the Balsillie School of International Affairs in Canada, said US trade restrictions were not the most effective tool against the Tigray situation, as they did not target those involved in the conflict. It is actually targeting many women in Ethiopia and those who work in textile factories and other similar factories, Fitzgerald said. About 80% of Ethiopians employed in the textile and apparel industry are women. The US delisting has made Ethiopia explore a range of other economic partners to help fill this gap, including China. And China was already playing a significant role in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, Fitzgerald pointed out. China far ahead of West in funding sub-Saharan facilities. Study says, however, in the midterm, Ethiopia would be an unattractive market for investment, she said. The Tigray conflict brings some challenges, particularly concerning the security situation, and it has been complicated by the announcement by the U.S. Embassy which encourages non-essential staff to leave Ethiopia. Even U.S. interests might be affected, Fitzgerald noted. If you are an American or U.S. business, you were encouraged by former President Donald Trump and even more by President Biden to capitalize on the opportunities offered by AGOA to invest in Ethiopia. And many did this for their economic gain and the U.S. economic gain. One could argue that this could also affect the U.S. T-Tube argues, China is complaining for her crimes committed by her drones. China is irresponsible and accountable for the genocidal crimes being committed in Tigray. China is a bad friend.
Pope, humanity's retreat from peace is shameful. He said, "We have witnessed the slaughter resulting from conflicts in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, and those in the Ethiopian region of the Tigray." Speaking to members of the Congregation for Eastern Churches, Francis mentioned the many conflicts in the lands where Eastern Christians live, like Eastern Europe, the Tigray, and Lebanon. He also warned what the row over the liturgy can do, as in the case of the Syro-Malabar Church, if we give scandal. "We play the game of the master of division," he said. Vatican City, Asia News. Pope Francis today met in audience with members of the Congregation for the Oriental Churches, who are currently meeting in plenary assembly. In his address, the pontiff said that Benedict XV's unheeded warning about war as a useless slaughter continues to resonate in today's world. The words of his predecessor, who set up to the dicastery and died exactly 100 years ago, gave the current pope an opportunity to again point to the many backward steps the world is taking in relation to peace. "It seems that the highest award for peace should be given to the wars. It is such a contradiction. We have an attachment to war and this is tragic. Humanity is proud of its advancement in science and thought, in many beautiful things, but it is going backward in bringing about peace. It is the champion in making war. This should make us all feel shameful. We need to pray and ask pardon for this attitude. We had hoped that there would have been no need to repeat such statements in the third millennium, yet humanity seems still to be groping in the darkness. We have witnessed the slaughter resulting from conflicts in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq, and those in the Ethiopian region of the Tigray. Threatening winds continue to blow in the steppes of Eastern Europe, lighting fuses and firing weapons, and turning to ice the hearts of the poor and the innocent. They do not matter. Meanwhile, the tragedy of Lebanon continues, leaving so many people without their daily bread. Young people and adults have lost hope and are leaving those lands. Yet those lands are the motherland of the Eastern Catholic churches.
Such tragedies touch the life of Eastern Christian communities. Your daily existence is thus like a blend of the precious gold dust of your past and the witness of heroic faith of many in the present, together with the mire of the misery for which we too are responsible and the pain visited upon you by external forces. Again, you are seeds on the stalks and the branches of age-old plants, transported by the wind to unimaginably distant places. Eastern Catholics have lived for decades now on distant continents, having sailed oceans and seas, and crossed vast plains. This diaspora, Francis added, also provides an opportunity for the whole Church to pay close heed to the richness of the different traditions. I think, for example, of the process of the adult catechumenate, which provides for the celebration of the sacraments of Christian initiation in a unitary form, a custom that the Eastern churches have preserved in practice also for children. The long-established synodal tradition of the Eastern churches is precious for the universal church, which needs to understand that the synodal process is not a parliament, but a journey of walking together under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. For Francis, the beauty of the Eastern rites is much more than simply an oasis of escape or of conservation. Indeed, even those traditions that preserve the use of the iconostasis with the royal door, or the veil that conceals the sanctuary at some moments in the rite, teach us that these are architectural or ritual elements that speak not of distance from God, but rather heighten the mystery of the condescension of the syncatabasis, by which the Word came and continues to come to the world. Lastly, addressing the issue of the liturgies of the Eastern churches, Pope Francis referred to the ongoing clash in India, without expressly mentioning it within the Syro-Malabar Church over the unified liturgy. With respect to the form of the celebration is concerned, it is necessary that unity be experienced in accordance with what has been laid down by the synods and approved by the Apostolic See, avoiding liturgical particularisms that in reality manifest divisions of another kind within the respective churches. Furthermore, let us not forget that our brothers and sisters of the Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches are watching us. Even if we cannot sit at the same Eucharistic table, nonetheless we almost always celebrate and pray the same liturgical texts. Let us be attentive therefore to forms of experimentation that can harm the journey towards visible unity of all Christ's disciples. The world needs the witness of our communion. If we give scandal by our liturgical disputes, and unfortunately there have been some recently, we play the game of the master of division.